All right, we're going to start with Proverbs 21. As a quick recap, we've been studying through the book of Proverbs. Now we're tackling different themes that are found in the individual proverbs, because Proverbs isn't laid out like it's in chapters, but the chapters aren't a theme. It's individual lines within the book, within the chapters. One verse, sometimes two verses or three verses are individual proverbs. So we're dealing with the proverbs that have to do right now with the rich and the poor, poverty and wealth. And since Proverbs is giving us wisdom that is based on the law of God, it's saying, what can we learn about who God is and what he wants and how to please him? That's wisdom. And wisdom is pleasing God. So how can we please God with poverty and wealth is essentially what we're looking at. So we studied first what the Old Testament law says about poverty and wealth. And then we've seen really the same themes being borne out in the Proverbs. First, we saw a group of Proverbs that deal with just the value of wisdom above riches and above wealth. Wisdom is the chief thing. Then we see Proverbs that talk about how it's foolish to hasten to be rich, to have your goal and your focus riches, because of course it is the Lord who's really ultimately in charge of that, and pleasing him makes more sense, is more wise than trying to run for the riches, right? And then we saw several proverbs that deal with the rich man. Some rich people are wise with their wealth, and some rich people are foolish, with their wealth. And so you've got those two dynamics going on there between the rich people. And then we've looked at now the poor man. Last time we met, we talked about the wise poor man and the amount of wisdom that can be in even a poor man who doesn't have a lot of wealth. He can use wisdom, and that's the chief thing. That's the difference maker between individuals, is their wisdom, not their wealth. Now we're going to go on to the foolish poor man, and there is a ton that the Proverbs have to tell us about foolish poor men. Really, this is going to lead us and segue into a slightly different theme that's really in the same vein, and that is laziness, which is going to be the big reason why the Proverbs is going to point at a foolish poor man and say, you're foolish because of laziness. So let's look at what it says. Let's start with Proverbs 21, verse 17. Proverbs 21, verse 17. He that loveth pleasure shall be a poor man. He that loveth wine and oil shall not be rich. Now this verse goes into that desire, right? His desire is just to please himself. He's going to end up poor. He loves wine and oil. He's not going to be rich. This just seems like there's Solomon must have gotten into a time machine and traveled to modern America, seen what was happening, and then traveled back and written this proverb, right? Because there are people who, in America, it's so very easy to make enough money to live. I mean, it's not that hard. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't people who are genuinely needy, but for those who are going to work hard, it's really not that very difficult. And yet people whenever they have extra money, they love pleasure, they love wine and oil and all the frills. They want to live like a rich person, even though they don't have riches. And they just end up being poor all the time, because whenever they have extra money, they just waste it on pleasure, whatever it is that'll make them happy or that will please them. Isn't this exactly the problem? And even this goes from, this is something that stretches across really financial boundaries in the United States. I know I have gone, because I formerly was a salesman, I've gone to people's houses to sell them things and had them tell me I don't have any money. And I'm looking around at the house, and I'm looking at all the stuff they have, and I'm thinking, how do you not have any money? And that's the reason. They've spent it all on everything. They've got 3 or 4 cars, really nice cars in the driveway. They've got a massive house, and they have no money. And I'm thinking, why would you buy all this stuff if you don't have any money? Oh, we'll pay it off eventually. That is the principle here that Solomon is declaring. He that loves pleasure shall be a poor man, meaning your goal is just to please yourself. Your goal is whatever makes you happy at the moment. That's going to make you poor. And get this, it's not just financially poor, right? There's a spiritual poverty that comes with only thinking about ourselves, only focusing on ourselves. This is why people who hear the gospel often don't accept the gospel, because to accept the gospel is to deny yourself. There's a I'm a sinner, I need Jesus element to the gospel. And that requires us to turn from ourselves and turn to Christ. And he that loves pleasure is going to not just be poor physically, but he's going to be poor in every way. He's going to be poor spiritually and all those things. Even Christians who are genuine Christians who then live the rest of their life just seeking their own pleasure and their own selves, seeking their own comfort, are very weak and poor Christians in the spiritual sense, not to mention in the physical sense. So this is just, I think, a great introductory verse for the subject of the foolishness that comes along with poverty. Not everyone who's poor is poor because of their foolish choices. The category we're dealing with now is the people who are poor because they were foolish. I almost said that word my mom doesn't like me to say. They were stupid. They were stupid, okay? They were stupid. Their own foolish choices, okay? Oh, boy. All right, so nobody tell her, okay? Nobody allowed to tell her. Okay, Proverbs chapter 6. Proverbs chapter 6. We actually read this already, but we did it, I think, on our Labor Day week when we were outside. We didn't record it, put it up online. So it's interesting that we get to go back over and through this passage now that we're on the subject again. Verse 6 says, "Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways, and be wise, which having no guide nor overseer or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, so shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man." The ant, right, he doesn't just gather enough to eat right now. He gathers enough because he knows winter's coming, and he's got to be prepared for that. So there's a wisdom in the ant's work, not just so that I can have what I want right now and get myself satisfied, like the guy who's only working for pleasure, right? He's working for the weekend, The ant is looking down the road, and he's looking into the distance. Verse 6, "Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways, and be wise, which having no guide or overseer or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest." So she has enough food for the summer, and she gathers extra in the harvest to be prepared for the winter. Now, verse 9 is interesting because he says it becomes a conversation between Solomon and the sluggard. He had said, "Go to the ant, thou sluggard." Now he says, "How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep?" Are you just going to sleep all day? I mean, you're just going to sleep in all day long and then get up, get something to eat, and go back to sleep? I mean, we're just going to lay around the house all day? Every now and then, I suppose, we can lay around the house. But Solomon's saying, what, you're just going to do this all the time? "How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep?" Now the response from the sluggard is verse 10. "Yet a little sleep." I just need a little bit more. I just hit the snooze. I need to go back to sleep. Yet a little sleep. Yeah. This is what we call a call and a response. It happens, you can find it several times throughout the poetic books of the Bible. A call and a response. So, how long will you? The response is, just a little bit more sleep. Just a little more slumber. Just let me sleep a little longer. A little folding of the hands to sleep. I always think of that. What's that children's song? Yes, yeah, where they do this hand symbols and a little folding of the hands to sleep. And now Solomon is going to respond to that answer. That's your answer? Is that your answer? Oh, I just need to sleep a little bit more, just a little bit more. You're never satisfied with getting enough rest. So shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, which is like a robber, somebody who jumps on you in the path and robs from you. That's how your poverty is going to show up. It's going to all of a sudden show up, and all of a sudden everything you thought you had that was allowing you to live in comfort and at ease is going to be gone. And then what are you going to do? Right? So shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man. You're going to sleep away whatever it is, whatever that security is that makes you feel like you can just sleep all day. It's going to be gone. And you're not going to know how and why it went because you were sleeping. You're going to miss it. And then what are you going to do? So go to the ant, and even if you already feel that you are secure financially, go be diligent. Go to the ant, thou sluggard, and be diligent. Or else your poverty is going to come upon it. So he's talking here to a person who is not in poverty and saying poverty is going to come upon you because of your laziness, which is, of course, often the result. Let's talk more about the folly of laziness that results in poverty in Proverbs chapter 10. And we're really going to be on the subject of laziness at least for a couple weeks. We're going to just stay here. We're going to be very slow with our laziness. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 4 says, He becometh poor that dealeth with a slack hand, but the hand of the diligent maketh rich. So he becometh poor that deals with a slack hand. The idea is that his hand is lazy. The picture that Solomon seems to be painting is he's doing the work, but he's not really, he's just doing enough to get by. The boss told him to do it. He's going to go out and do what he's got to do, but he's dealing with a slack hand. This is a run out the clock situation here. He's just, I'm here at 9. I got to leave at 5. Let's see what I can do to make this take a long time. He becometh poor that dealeth with a slack hand, meaning he's out there dealing, he's out there working, but as lazily as possible. We used to have a guy when I was working at Walmart back at my second job was working at Walmart, and we had a guy that we called him Hip, and because his hands were always in his pockets, HIP, hands in pockets. So he was always like this, was standing around the store, never doing anything. That's what's being described here. Oh yeah, he's there at the job, but he's dealing with a slack hand. But anyway, the hand of the diligent makes rich. So there is a result of laziness that is poverty. Now this is also true in many areas of life, right? Not just about wealth. But if there's anything that you're going to do, you're going to work hard at it, you're going to be richer in it, right? If you go to school and you are learning something and you learn it diligently, you will be richer in that knowledge, right? But if you go to the same class, sit and hear the same teacher, do the same homework, but do it lazily, the manner in which you do it is going to make you poor in the knowledge of that thing, right? And of course, it applies very obviously spiritually. For the Christian who's going to say, I'm going to go out and I'm going to serve the Lord diligently. I'm going to do everything I can to live my life for Him. There's a richness of spiritual growth in that person's life that is not seen, even in a genuine Christian who is slack in his Christianity. It just applies all around, which is why these Proverbs are so brilliant. Let's do another one, Proverbs 13, verse 4. Because they're all going to beat in a circle around the same bush. Proverbs 13, verse 4. The soul of the sluggard desireth and hath nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made fat.
Not working towards anything.
Yeah, he has a lot of things he wants.
Yeah, we all do. Well, you got to
Yeah.
work to get them.
Exactly. I want to get them, but I don't want to have to work for them. You know, I want to have my student loans paid off, but I don't want to have to. I want to have the knowledge of that I get from going to college, but I don't want to have to pay my student loans. I don't have to work out. That's one example that's very modern, right? We're dealing with today. The soul of the sluggard desireth and has nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made fat. Remember, soul in the Proverbs is often used to refer to like desires, intentions, his will. Here, the soul of the sluggard, he has things that he wants. His soul desires things, but his body does not have them. Like he physically doesn't have them because he's a sluggard, he's lazy. On the other hand, the diligent person desires things and he goes out and he works for them. He says, I don't expect someone else to give me these things. I expect that if I'm going to get that, I'm going to go out and work for it. And so he goes out and he works for it, and his soul is made fat, meaning he receives whatever it is that he desires. Now this is very applicable, right? Solomon is writing these in a way that's, okay, this can apply to me as a king, this can apply to you as a pauper, it can apply to anyone, anywhere. Whatever it is that you desire, go out and work for it, right? People say, I really, and you can apply this to Christianity, of course. I really want to serve God. I really want to follow God. Well, go out and find a way to use your gifts for the Lord. Well, I don't want. Somebody needs to, and then there's always an excuse or whatever. Again, this is applicable in all areas of life. It's very, very, very true. The diligent person, he has this wonderful fatness, if you will, in his soul. He feels so fulfilled, not just because he has the thing that he wanted, but because he knows that he worked for it. And, he could, I went out and I worked hard and I learned what I need to learn to get, and I receive, and there's that satisfaction that comes with a hard day's work. Our society is so against this verse, isn't it? Like, oh no, you shouldn't have to work for these things. You should be given them. Oh, you don't have money to buy a house? We're gonna give you a loan for a house. The interesting thing that we'll get around to with that concept is that when we get around to the subject of being kind and giving and helping the poor, we're going to talk about that, because that is something that's happening in our society that is in the name of helping the poor, in the name of charity. But in its essence, when you look at what it is that poor people need, it is actually oppressing the poor. It's causing them to continue in laziness, to continue in being not diligent. The poor that are poor because they are foolish, they are being encouraged to continue in foolishness. That's right. So when we get to the part we talk about actually helping the poor, we need to talk about why this person is poor. If the person is a wise poor man who can be helped by giving them money, great. But if they are a foolish poor man, what you need to give them is wisdom, not money. All right, we'll talk more about that when we get to that section. Okay, verse 11 of the same chapter, Proverbs 13, verse 11. Wealth gotten by vanity shall be diminished, but he that gathereth by labor shall increase. How does that hit you? There seems to be a lot of applications for that verse. Wealth gotten by vanity or emptiness. So this person is getting wealth, but they're getting it in a vain way, an empty way, something that is not substantial, the opposite of diligence. So then you have wealth gotten by vanity, wealth that you didn't work for, seems to be what it's saying, right?
Through inheritance.
Yeah, inheritance would probably go into this. Wealth, that, unless you've been, I suppose in Bible times, inheritance a lot of times is something you were raised working your father's business. When your father dies, you get that business, but you've been working for it. There's a difference there than just, oh, some uncle I never knew died, and I got $100,000, or whatever. I think inheritance often falls under that category.
Lotteries.
Yeah. Lottery, gambling, I think. The Bible never says don't gamble. But the principles about money and wisdom definitely tell you, why are you gambling? That's a bad idea, right? Because gambling is all about getting money without working and hasting to be rich, the exact things that are condemned in the scriptures. When I when I read this, I know it's not directly applicable, but I think about that money you get on your wedding day. Wealth gotten by vanity is quickly diminished. Where'd that money go? I thought we had some money. Wealth gotten by vanity shall be diminished. I think you're spot on there, Lou, that often wealth gotten by vanity is not valued. You didn't work for it. You're not careful how you spend it, all of those things. But he that gathereth by labor shall increase. I will always remember the first time that I bought my own gas. My mom brought me to the gas station because I wanted to drive the car, and it wasn't my car. I didn't have my own car. And she's like, all right, you're buying gas. And I had a job, so I went and I started pumping that gas. And she's like, how does it feel seeing your money tick away on that screen? And I said, it's not good at all. I don't like this. When is this going to stop? Is it full yet? Because now I labored for it, so I value it a lot more, and I'm going to be more careful with how it's spent. Yeah, I think that's definitely what it's saying. Let's go to Proverbs 19. If we have just maybe a few more, we'll squeeze in a few more and then pick up next week where we left off. Proverbs 19, verse 15. Slothfulness casteth into a deep sleep, and an idle soul shall suffer hunger. So slothfulness casteth into a deep sleep. Slothfulness is a word for laziness, right? And an idle soul shall suffer hunger. When you have that habitual, if you ever maybe on a vacation, you're taking a vacation, and you just, I don't know if you're the type of person on vacation you want to go out and do stuff, then you probably are going to have a harder time identifying this. I'm the type of person on vacation, I'm going to try really hard not to do anything, like nothing. If you guys want to go do something, go for it. I'm going to sleep in. I'm going to chill. I'm going to try to do nothing. But you know what happens after a day or two of that? You all of a sudden, you're like, oh, I'm so tired. I can't do anything. Because your body is getting used to just sleeping all the time. And it's not getting even, like, your muscles are not getting the just basic use that they need. And now they're actually, like, there's, I don't know all the, I'm not the nurse in the room, but there's actual, like, medical things going on there. The point is you feel like just sleeping all the time because you've been sleeping all the time. And that's why I think at least some of the reason why when you come back from work, I've come back from vacation, you have to go back to work, you're like, oh, no. Because it becomes much worse because now you've been relaxing so much. So there's this principle that is fine for a vacation, right? But slothfulness ends up casting people into an even deeper sleep, like this even deeper state of laziness. The idle soul, of course, is going to end up suffering hunger because the more idle you are, the less you want to work. The less you work, the more hungry you are. And it's sort of this vicious cycle, isn't it? Let's do one more, and then I'll get your thoughts, and we'll stop there. Proverbs 20, just one chapter over. Proverbs 20, verse 4, and then verse 13. Here's verse 4. It says this, the sluggard will not plow by reason of the cold, therefore shall he beg and harvest and have nothing. And then verse 13 of the same chapter, love not sleep, lest thou come to poverty. Open thine eyes, and thou shalt be satisfied with bread. What are your thoughts on those two as you're thinking about them?
I mean, it's just so self-explanatory that it
Pretty clear,
doesn't
isn't
need
it?
an explanation from us.
It's right there in black and white. The sluggard is going to come up with excuses not to go out and do the work. Oh, it's too cold. I'm not going to plow today. I'll do it when it's the perfect temperature.
Perfect example of today's whiners.
Yep. So at harvest time, he's not harvesting his own food. He's begging. He's begging from others. And that's the thing in Israel. Remember in Israel that the poor, that when you harvested your field, you were to leave the edges, just, as you're going around the edges, for poor people. And now here's a person who has his own field but didn't plow it because it was too cold.
Yeah.
And now he's over at your field gathering the edges for the poor people. And you're thinking, what are you doing? You have your own field, go plow it. This is for the people who can't. And you are willfully lazy and coming up with excuses not to do. And those people, this is a little off the text, but those people think that they have good read, like, oh, it was just, woe is me, I couldn't plow because it was too cold, and now look at me. And I'm thinking, go out and plow then. Like, plow in the cold, put a coat on. All right, surely you've got to have a coat somewhere. I think you're right, Tim. I think this is just it's just black and white. It's plain.
I'd buy him a coat instead of giving him any food.
There you go. Yeah, but
It's a coat, dude. Now go do it on your own.
Yeah, but that coat doesn't cover my head and my ears. My ears just get. They'll come up with another excuse.
Talk about that all
Do
day.
you apply this to spiritually too?
Yeah, I'm sure you could.
That's
Absolutely.
kind of what hits my...
What we have a lot of, you have this real danger in a church where people will rely on the teaching from the pulpit and everything. They'll beg and harvest. Now, there's nothing wrong with coming to church. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to tell you not to come to church, all right? Come to church. You need to be at church. But you should also be diligent about those things that you hear, those things that you learn, the scriptures on your own, that there's a diligence required there more than just trying to beg off of someone else's study, do your own study,
Big time.
Absolutely. And then the second one in verse 13 is, love not sleep, lest thou come to poverty. That's very similar to what we've already seen. Solomon had a lot to say about this, didn't he? Open thine eyes, and thou shalt be satisfied with bread. Meaning just get up. Open your eyes. Wake up. And just go live your life. Like, go out and live like every other person and work. Go out and do the things that you have to do, and you'll have bread. Don't live your life for sleep and then say, oh, I don't have any food. What am I? Which is what people are being encouraged to do in our society. They're encouraged to live their life for pleasure and sleep, and then that keeps them dependent on the government, and it's really a way to oppress the poor, not to help them. Father in heaven, we thank you for giving us the joy of the Lord, for giving us the ability to not only study your word, but to do so with your understanding, with your spirits, and to do it together. It's wonderful to be able to gather together like this and to examine the scriptures as a church, as a unit, and to grow in each other's observations as well as in our own. Thank you for what we've been able to see here. Thank you for giving us all the things that we see in society and we think, man, this is wrong. It's wonderful when we look in your word and say, oh, it really is wrong. God even said so. We thank you for giving us these guiding principles, that they're not things that we just came up with because we want them to be true, that it's declared to us by you. We're thankful for that. Pray that you help us now to go out and to live according to the instructions you've given us, to have this wisdom and apply it to our lives. We thank you for this. In Jesus' name, amen.